So I've been defending season 3 of Star Trek quite a bit because some of the criticisms I think have been unfair, and a lot of it just seems to be go with the flow over Spock's brain and stuff like that. But there are some missteps here. Shows that I'm perfectly enjoy and for what they deliver. But I can see the flaws, and such was the case with the Mark of Gideon. Now, Mark of Gideon has elements to it that you almost think you're about to see a Twilight Zone, level of episode here, and it certainly has some of the imagery of whatnot, and sort of, of Kirk not understanding where he is and what's going on, and a mystery, if you will. And but ultimately the outcome and what the core of the plot was kind of falls apart. So basically Gideon is this planet that's a bit of an isolationist planet, and the Federation's been trying to open talks with them and all this stuff, and then they've reached out now and said, okay, they'll talk to Captain Kirk and only Captain Kirk about possibly having relations with the Federation and so on. So Kirk agrees to do this. He beams down, but he doesn't beam down. Apparently, he glows and glitters, and then it all stops, and he's still on the transporter pad. But Spock, who was beaming him down, is not there anymore, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" He starts walking the halls, and there's no one on the ship. It's completely empty, and he's like, something's happened, and I don't know what's going on. And that's a cool element of it, and it's a bit of the spookiness of what's happened to him. But immediately they show the audience that that's not what happened. Spock's in command of the Enterprise, and he gets word from Gideon, says, "Hey, we're waiting for Kirk," and then he's like, well, he just beamed down. He says, well, we don't have him here. And then oh my God, he's missing, And then they cut back to Kirk on the empty Enterprise, apparently. He notices a bruise on his arm and realizes he's lost some amount of time. He's not sure what's going on. And then, lucky for him, though, suddenly a beautiful girl shows up. Gee, I wonder what Kirk's going to do with her. Yeah. So, gee, what's going on? Well, the girl claims not to have any memory and whatnot, but, and then there's a couple of scenes they don't see it, but the screen goes dark, and there's all these faces staring at them. Gee, I wonder what that could mean. Well, ultimately, they're not on the Enterprise. They're on a fake Enterprise that's been completely recreated on the planet of Gideon, I guess underground. And all of this to trick Kirk, because turns out Gideon is just completely overpopulated, so much so that people are literally crammed into one another just to get around town and whatnot, which makes you wonder how they were able to find the space to build the entire Enterprise underground or what have you, but they did. And the problem is that long ago they defeated all disease, and so maybe not completely immortal, but they certainly live a very long time. And it seems like, well, couldn't you just get your space-aged people? Couldn't you just find other planets? But no, they're going to keep their culture and all that stuff protected and contained and whatnot. So what to do? They needed to find some new illness that could restore the lifespan to something more normal. I guess they want to die. And rather than just kill themselves, I guess they decided they needed a disease. Well, it turns out Kirk has one and barely survived it, but it still dwells within the virus within his blood. So they want to capture that and use that. So the girl is a volunteer to catch it from Kirk. Now, gee, I wonder how she caught it. Well, of course, while in between beaming him at some point, there's a gap between him when he beamed off the Enterprise and then arrived on Gideon. They must have somehow put him unconscious, got the sample from him, and that explains the bruise. And then they injected her with it. Why they needed Kirk and all of that with the ship? Well, in the hopes that he would fall in love with her and be willing to stay so that they could cultivate the virus from him for the rest of the population. Oh boy, this is ridiculous. And that's the weak part about it. But the girl does contract this virus. She caught the STD from Kirk when they no, obviously from the sample that they took from Kirk, and she starts dying. And meanwhile, the other aspect of the show is the critiques of bureaucracy and diplomacy and whatnot, and how locked in Spock was when he realized something was going on, that the Gideons were lying to him about what happened to Captain Kirk, and ultimately he violates orders, to find out what's going on, and manages to beam down into this, recreation of the Enterprise and find Kirk. And they leave with the girl, who turns out to be the daughter of the, Prime Minister or whatever, of Gideon. Yes, I'm very brave that my daughter is going to die of this disease. But, or brave, I mean proud. So they beam back. McCoy, of course, saves her. But at the same time, they wanted Kirk to stay, which is ridiculous because right off the bat, the girl says, well, I guess I'll go down and I'll be the source of the disease now. And, yeah, you could have done that all along. They couldn't figure that out. It's just ridiculous. Once they had the sample, they had the sample. I mean, you can reproduce that. And certainly, it was viable within the girl, O'Donna, whatever her name was. It's like, it's business of no, Captain, we need you to stay. And they built this whole copy of his ship and everything. It doesn't work. It's not thought out well enough for it. The idea of achieving, long life like that, where you defeat all disease and what have you, well, you can see the problems, and of course Kirk says, hey, there's birth control and stuff, which is kind of interesting, a show that old, says, hey, look, there's all kinds of but a certain amounts of birth control. I said, well, it doesn't work because of the regenerative powers. It restores everything. So the pill wouldn't work on that. But, you got condoms. Curse. Look, I carry them with me all the time. But I guess they didn't try those either. Because, they're not 100%, So, but anyway, the idea that yes, there could, careful what you wish for. If you defeated all disease and people live such long lives, then overpopulation can become from the resources run out and this sort of thing. So it was a planet of people who wanted a death wish, and they got it. It's just like they're not really going to stop them from inflicting this new disease on them. And now, of course, she carries it, but still, it's the whole thing of, hey, look, it's the Enterprise, and they trick Kirk into thinking he was on it, but it's really not. It's a recreation of it to get him to fall in love with the girl that he was going to kill. Yeah, it doesn't work out. But, there's some cool imagery, and plus you get a pretty good tour of the Enterprise set, because it's completely empty. Except, for Kirk and the girl, But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, revisiting and figuring out how to make that work. But there's just no reason to recreate the Enterprise like that, just because it gives you this eerie scene and whatnot. But that would be something like, I don't know, he's in another parallel universe again or something. But not for this. But then you got to figure out, how do you stretch this out? They just want Kirk's blood for the disease, and it's just why they thought they had to keep him. You wouldn't. Once you got one infected, you're good to go. Thanks, Kirk. Be on your way now. It's like, hey, what the hell is this? Oh, well. So, yeah, got to say, even because sometimes of the Star Trek shows, I say, hey, look, maybe this was flawed and that was flawed, but at least the concept was here, and not so much. Some of it, yeah, but I don't think it was fully executed script-wise and plot. So, but, can't win them all, but still, better than some other things lately. Yeah. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness. So many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.